morning. Great to see all of you on this fine Lord's Day. Glad to see you, glad to be with you. Last week we had talked about some of the reasons as to why some people treat Christianity like it's a hobby. And we had gone through several different reasons as to why that is. We talked about how some people, they have their specific reasons as to why they have the hobbies that they do, and sometimes that gets carried over into how they treat their Christianity. And so we had about 5 points with that as to why they treat their Christianity like a hobby, or how that happens. That we said that they'll do it only when it makes them feel good. We said that some people, when they treat it like a hobby, they'll do it only out of convenience and if it's convenient for them. We had said that some people, the reason they treat it like a hobby is because they don't really have any expectations. There's no expectations attached to it. There's nothing expected of them. Nobody is, there's nothing that they expect out of themselves or anything. And then we talked about that they treat it as if it's optional. When they treat it like a hobby, they treat it like it's optional. And then we had said that if Christianity is treated like a hobby, the investment is going to be very minimal. The investment's going to be low. But this week, we're going to kind of flip that around, and we're going to talk about the opposite side of that. Okay? And we had ended with this slide actually right here last week. We had ended with Christianity is so much more than just a hobby. It's a lifestyle. And so we're now going to flip this around and talk about it from that point of view. When Christianity is a lifestyle. Okay, and basically what we're going to do is we're just going to mirror all of the same points that we talked about last week and just flip that on its head and talk about it from a lifestyle point of view. Okay, I think sometimes what people fail to remember or see is that Christianity, this life, living as a Christian, it's a completely and totally different way to live. This life can't be treated like how we treat everything else. Christianity is not like everything else. In its truest form, it's very much different from everything else in life. The approach to Christianity and living as a Christian, it has to be different from an approach that we have with everything else in the world. It can't look like the world. And so the approach is different, your mindset is different, your lifestyle is different, living as a Christian. And so, to take that first point, now, when Christianity is a lifestyle, it will be done even when it doesn't feel good. The first point last week was if it's treated like a hobby, people only do it when it feels good. No, when it's a lifestyle, people do it even if it doesn't feel good. All right? I know that we live in a time, in this country especially, where everything is built to minimize challenges, and everything is kind of built to make us uncomfortable as least as possible. That's really how our society is. From air conditioning to Wi-Fi to how we do our shopping, even the use of AI is causing us to not really have to work as much. Everything is kind of made to be very easy for us in our society. And really, we are reluctant to do things if it is uncomfortable, or if it's hard, or if it puts us in positions that we don't really want to be in. But church, Christianity isn't like that. In fact, it's very much uncomfortable at times, this life. You go back and you think about the apostles. Very early on, they were met with persecution and opposition, all from really the religious leaders at the time. They had that, and really all because they would not stop speaking about what they had seen and heard. They wouldn't stop speaking and teaching and preaching about Jesus, and so that brought on some persecution for them very, very early on in the book of Acts. They were really threatened because of that, because of the preaching. They were threatened. They were thrown in jail because of that, and on one occasion, the rulers even flogged them because of that. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that those things probably weren't very comfortable. Those things were things that they probably did not enjoy doing. But they really weren't that concerned about how uncomfortable it was. That's really not what they were worried about. In fact, after that flogging instance that they had endured, Acts chapter 5 and verse 41 tells us that they went on their way after that from the presence of the Sanhedrin, rejoicing that they had been considered worthy to suffer shame for the name. They were happy about it. It didn't really bother them. Let me ask you something. When's the last time that you walked away from doing something uncomfortable in your Christianity, rejoicing? And you were excited about it. And even though it brought on some persecution in your life, you rejoiced about it. When's the last time that happened for you? When's the last time you did something for Jesus, maybe even spoke up for Jesus, knowing that you're probably going to get some backlash and maybe even some persecution, and when it happens, you walk away from that experience rejoicing, knowing that you did what you were supposed to do? You see, that's part of what Christianity is. You will do things with a completely different mindset when Christ is your life. You will. When you think about the Apostle Paul, think about all of the things that he went through. Some of those sufferings we would not be happy to have endured. But he actually talks about a lot of those things in 2 Corinthians chapter 11. Mind you, remember Jesus did tell Ananias in Acts chapter 9 and verse 16, he said, listen, Ananias, I'm going to show him how much he's going to have to suffer for my name. And then Paul goes on, and we kind of get that in 2 Corinthians 11. But look at some of this. I mean, he goes down an entire list of things that he endured. He says, listen, I've gone through labors. I've had imprisonments. There's been beatings. I've been in danger of death. There's been lashings. I've been stoned on one occasion. And there's been shipwrecks. I've been in danger from rivers and robbers and his own people even, he says, and Gentile people. There's been dangers in the city, in the wilderness, on the sea, even among false brethren. He says there's been sleepless nights that I've had to go through. I've been hungry, I've been thirsty, I've been cold and exposed. And you know what probably bothered him the most? It was the daily concern for all of the churches. That probably bothered him the most out of that entire list. It was Paul's love for the church and his concern for the saints. But yet, do you know what Paul had encouraged and strengthened the disciples with? In Acts chapter 14, in verse 22, it says, strengthening the souls of the disciples, encouraging them to continue in the faith, and saying, through many tribulations we must enter the kingdom of God. Paul understood, look, this life, living this Christian life, it just is what it is. We're going to have to go through a lot of this hard stuff. It's not going to be easy. You want to get into the kingdom of God, you want to get into the kingdom of heaven, it just is what it is. We're going to have to go through some tough things being a Christian. There's going to be tribulations. Church, we are not going to get into the kingdom of God without getting a little bit uncomfortable. When Christianity is our life, sometimes it's not going to make us feel good. just is what it is. But we do it because of what Christ has done for us, right? So look, maybe sometimes it's not always physical suffering with like us and our life, okay? Maybe sometimes it's not always physical suffering, but there are still some things that we're going to have to get uncomfortable with in this Christian life, okay? And so I would say, get uncomfortable and be okay with that. Understand and accept that that's just part of it. And so sometimes those things that don't really feel good, maybe some of those is you talking to that person that you've been putting off talking to about their spiritual life. You know, that's not a very comfortable conversation to have, but it is one that needs to be had. Maybe getting uncomfortable for you might be removing yourself out of an environment that's not good for you spiritually. Maybe it's removing yourself from certain people that are in your life that are dragging you down. Maybe it's a work environment that you need to really take a serious look at. It might be you taking up that cross and dying to the things that are hindering you from following. You know, maybe you've got to die to the pride that you have in your life. Maybe it's stubbornness that you need to die to. Maybe it's greediness that you need to put away. Or maybe it's laziness. Or maybe it's covetousness. Whatever it is, die to the sin that's in your life. Now, are those things going to feel good? No. It's not going to feel good to have to put those away. But when Christianity is a lifestyle for you, that's exactly what you do. You do things even if they don't feel good. The second thing, when Christianity is a lifestyle for you, it will be done even when it's not convenient. You know, it's just the opposite of when it's treated like a hobby and how you do it when it is convenient, not when it's your life, not when it's a lifestyle for you. As a Christian, there are going to be times when you do things and they are not going to be at appropriate times. Or when we would prefer them, necessarily. But when Christianity is your life and it's the lifestyle that you live, you are more than willing to do something at an inopportune time or when it's not convenient for you. You take the Good Samaritan, for example, in Luke chapter 10. You know, the man that had been beaten and left for dead on the side of the road, you had what? You had the priest that walked by, you had the Levite that had walked by, and they walked by on the other side of the road, by the way. They purposefully avoided this man. They didn't want to be stopped by trying to help this person. And perhaps it was because they didn't want to be inconvenienced by the man that was laying there half dead. These people were religious people. Supposed to be. They were supposed to be people of God, yet they didn't seem to want anything to do with it. Now, the Scripture doesn't really tell us if they had things that, you know, they were on their way to do, or maybe they had better things to do. It just says that they passed the man up. But then here comes the Samaritan, and it doesn't even say if he had things to do either. But what did he do? He stopped and he helped the guy. They passed him up, but he stopped to help, and he bandaged his wounds, and he took care of him, and he took him to the inn, and he paid a little bit of money, and he said, help this guy out. Do you think that was a convenient thing for that man? Well, probably not. I mean, I'm sure it was somewhat of an inconvenience. But that's kind of what we're talking about. Folks, when Christianity is your life, you will go out of your way. You will take the time. You will sacrifice. You'll show up. You'll stay late. You'll do those things even when it's not convenient. Now, I understand that, you know, in a given work week, there are a lot of things that can come up, and there are things that can show up that you did not plan for, nor did you anticipate. But listen, you may have somebody even this week that wants to get together with you and talk about some spiritual things and talk about their life. That might happen this week to you. Take the time to do that. Take the time to talk to those people. Fit it in somehow. Maybe you have a friend or even your children, maybe they ask you a spiritual question about God or the church or whatever it is. Take the time to talk to them about that. It doesn't matter if you've got things already going on. It doesn't matter if you're tired. Take the time to do that. Maybe somebody reaches out to you and they're going through a tough time and they really need to sit down with you. Listen, I'm going to tell you, it's very easy sometimes to ignore the text message or let the phone call go to voicemail because you have other things in front of you at the moment. It's very easy to do that. Listen, you have no idea how important it might be for those people who are reaching out to you because they need some help. Take the time for those people. Take the time to meet with them. Meet up with them for coffee. I don't know what you do, but take the time for those people. It's important. I can remember when my wife and I were coming to Christ, and it was a time where we really needed to just dig into the Word and study the Bible. Well, somebody it was 7 o'clock in the evening, and this person took time in the midst of their busy schedule, and it was a very busy schedule. They took the time and they studied with us, and they kind of walked through some marriage counseling with us. Why? Because that was important to us. We needed that. But do you think it was kind of a challenge to throw that into his routine of the week? Yeah. Now listen, we appreciated it. We were very grateful for that. We needed that. I'm going to tell you, other people need you. Other people need that. And they might be reaching out to you for a specific reason. They want your guidance. They want your help. Also, sometimes you're going to have to put your own foot down with yourself and force yourself to do things even if it might feel like it is taking your time away from something else. Sometimes you're going to have to put your own foot down with you. For some people, it might feel like, for some people it might feel like an inconvenience to pray. It does for some people. For some people, it might feel like an interruption for them to sit down and study or read their Bible. It can be hard for people to carve out time for spiritual discipline. And so sometimes you've just got to be intentional about things, and you've got to tell yourself, I'm not going to miss my alone time with God today. I am going to set time aside. I am going to pray. I'm not going to miss my time with God today. Put your foot down with yourself. Do the same thing when it comes to studying the Bible. Tell yourself, I am not going to miss. I am going to set time aside. I'm going to carve out time to sit down and read and study my Bible. You got to be intentional about some things sometimes, even with yourself. Even if it feels like it is an inconvenience. Church, when Christianity is your life, you're going to do things for people, maybe even yourself, at inconvenient times because souls matter. Because your soul matters. You're going to do it because eternity matters. That's what you do when you're a Christian. That's what you do. Number 3. I've actually roped 3 and 4 together this time. When Christianity is a lifestyle, you're going to understand that there are expectations and you don't treat it as optional. Matthew chapter 7 and verse 21, I think is a very familiar passage that we know, but Jesus there, he says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven will enter." Over and over, Jesus says things like this about how important it is to do the will of the Father, hear the words and act on the words, and obey God's commandments. You find that over and over with Jesus. And you can't separate Christ's commandments from Christianity and what's expected. I mean, you can't read through the New Testament and somehow come away with that there are not things expected of you. There are things expected of you as a Christian. And it really is very easy for us to grasp this idea of expectations because we have them so much just in our daily life. I mean, you think about your job. Well, do you have a manager? Do you have a boss that you answer to? When you signed up to do whatever job it was, did they give you a job description and say, "Hey, here's the expectations. Here's your job responsibilities. Here are the things that you are supposed to do." And what'd you do? You said, "Oh yeah, I'm good with that. Let's roll. I'll move right along. Let's get going. I'm ready to earn some money. I'm ready to make some money. Sounds like a good gig to me. Yeah, let's go." Maybe you have a player on a team. Well, listen, that player for sure understands that there are things that are expected of him or her, on any team. If you want to play, well, first off, you got to go to class. And if you want to play, you got to pass those classes. You got to show up to the meetings. You got to show up to the workouts. You have all this stuff that's expected of you. And we understand that. We understand that concept. And we do these things all the time. We know that there are expectations to meet, and we meet them a lot of times without even saying a word. It's no different with Christianity. A lot of us understand that there are things to do as a Christian and that God does expect things from us. And when Christianity is your life, you try, at least, to live up to those expectations. And it's not an option for you. You do them because you want to be pleasing to God. Listen, if you treated your job and all the expectations and the job responsibilities, if you treated your job like that and you say, "Well, I'll do them if I feel like it," you know what's going to happen? You're going to get fired. If you treated, if you're a player on a team and you say, "Well, I think I'll skip out on the meeting today. It's at 6 in the morning. I don't really feel like getting up that early and going to a meeting and sitting in a..." I've done that. It's not fun, but listen, if you treated that as optional, where you're going to be. You're going to lose a scholarship and you're going to be gone. They ain't going to keep you around. We understand that, okay? And it's no different with Christianity. And so, just for example, I mean, when Christianity is your life, like I said, you're not going to treat it as optional. Listen, Sunday mornings are not going to be optional for you. You're not going to treat Sunday morning as if it's an option. No, you're going to come and be with the brethren. You're going to come and take the Lord's Supper with the brethren on the Lord's Day, because why? That's what we do. We're Christians. This is what we do on the Lord's Day. We come and remember Jesus. We commune together with other Christians. That's what we do. It's not going to be treated as an option. No. When Christianity is a lifestyle for you, you're not going to leave your Christianity behind. You're not going to leave it behind at the building. You're going to take it with you throughout the rest of your week. You're going to take it to work with you. You're going to take it back home with you. It's a part of your everyday week. It's your life. So you're not going to leave it behind at the building. You're also, if it's your life, you're not going to leave it behind when you go on vacation. I think sometimes that happens with people. They say, "Well, I'm going on vacation. I think I'm going to I'm going to leave the Christianity at home. Listen, it doesn't matter if you're going to the mountains. It doesn't matter if you're going to the beach or if you're going on a cruise. Listen, your Christianity travels with you. And look, it's not a checked bag, it's a carry-on. You take your Christianity with you all the time. You take it with you everywhere you go. It travels with you. Because why? Because it is your life. You don't leave it behind. No. When it's your life, you're going to say no. When you're tempted to do the wrong things, you're going to say yes. When you're convicted to do the right things. When it's your life, you won't have to be reminded all the time about things that you should be doing as a Christian. When it's your life, you won't have to be reminded. You won't have to be preached to all the time. You won't have to be persuaded. Nobody's going to have to twist your arm to practice Christianity. You're going to do it because you love God and you understand what Jesus has done for you. Now, our last point a week ago was that if it's treated like a hobby, the investment is going to be minimal, or it's going to be very low. However, when Christianity is treated like a lifestyle, you're going to be all in. You're going to be all in. Throughout the Gospels, Jesus would often mention to those that were following him that this life was not a life where they could have one hand in the world while one hand is trying to hang on to Jesus. It's not a life where they could serve God and serve money. They weren't going to be able to be half-hearted about it or on the fence. They were going to have to be all in for Jesus if this is what they wanted. And I think a place where we really kind of see that is in Luke chapter 14. And starting in verse 25, it says that the crowds were going along with him, and then he just turns to them and says, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever doesn't carry his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Now, boy, if Jesus turned around and said that to me, I think that'd be a wake-up call. What did he say? Hate my mother. What? He actually follows that up with building a tower, or talking about building a tower and counting the cost to see if you might have enough to build it, or a king that sets out to meet another king in battle. And well, he first actually sits down to see if he has enough power or enough troops, or if his army is going to be strong enough to go up against the other, his opponent. And what he's saying is actually he kind of sums it all up in verse 33, and he says, so then, none of you can be my disciple who does not give up all of his possessions. And the idea is that with Christianity and following Jesus, you have to be all in. And you have to love other things less than you love Jesus. And here he puts it to the crowd and says, if you want to be a disciple of mine, I'm going to need to come before mom. I'm going to need to come before dad. I'm going to need to come before your husband, before your wife, before your children, and even yourself. What he's saying is, if you're going to choose this life, I'm going to have to be your number one. I'm going to have to be your number one. But when Christianity is your life and you're truly living it, Jesus is your number one. There's no question about it. As I said before, this life is a completely and totally different way to live. But when it is your life, and it's not just a hobby for you, it'll be done. You're going to do it even if it doesn't feel good. When it's your life, you're going to do it when it's not convenient for you. You're going to try your best to live up to the expectations that God has for you and not treat it as optional. When it's your life, you're going to be all in. All in and bought in. I want to say that if what we've talked about this morning has kind of piqued your interest into the lifestyle of living as a Christian, I really hope that you will talk with somebody here and share that with somebody, and let's talk about that. Because if you're thinking about it, then let's talk about it. I also want to say that if you're already a Christian, and maybe you feel like you have not treated Christianity in the way that you should, maybe, I hope that you will reevaluate. I hope that you will re-examine, reassess, and recommit yourself to Christianity. And let some of your brethren know that, if that's your position, because we want to help you get back on track. If any of that suits you, if that meets any of you, I really hope that you'll just let somebody know. We want to help you. We want to help you here. Let's stand and sing our song of invitation.